Imagine working 6 years under a boss so toxic. His ego arrived before he did. A boss who humiliated you daily, stole credit for your work, and made you detail his BMW on your lunch break. Now imagine the moment you finally break, but instead of exploding, instead of storming out, you execute the most brilliant, silent revenge that leaves him fired, humiliated, and forever haunted. This is the true story of Diana, a 38-year-old operations coordinator in Chicago who discovered that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's perfectly calculated. And what she did on her final Thursday will make you want to stand up and cheer. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Diana had worked at Riverside Transport Solutions in downtown Chicago for 6 brutal years. But everyone secretly called it Riverside Torture Solutions because every single day felt like psychological warfare. Her boss was Richard Bradshaw, a 49-year-old man who wore power like a weapon and expensive cologne like a territorial marker. That cologne announced his arrival before he rounded any corner and lingered long after he left, like a toxic cloud. Richard had mastered a particularly cruel technique: public compliments, private destruction. When corporate executives visited, he'd beam and announce, "This is Diana, my absolute rock star." But the second those doors closed, his smile would vanish. "You're embarrassingly slow, Diana. Painfully slow. Did they not teach you efficiency in that community college?" Diana had learned to absorb these insults the way a punching bag absorbs its. Every morning, she'd ride the blue line to work, staring out the window and whispering to herself, "Just make it through, Diana. Just make it through." But making it through came at a devastating cost. He forced her to stay until midnight fixing spreadsheets he'd corrupted. He sent her on personal errands during her breaks while calling them team-building exercises. Once, he accused her of misplacing a client contract, only to find it 3 days later in his own briefcase. Did he apologize? Never. He simply said, "This is exactly why I tell you to double-check everything." The other 12 staff members pitted Diana. During lunch breaks at the deli across the street, they'd whisper, "That man is a certified narcissist." "He doesn't just want control," another would add. "He feeds on making people feel small." Diana would sit quietly with her salad, manage a tired smile, and say, "It's all right. Things have a way of working out." She had no idea how prophetic those words would become. The breaking point arrived on a humid Thursday morning in late September. One of those mornings where you can feel disaster brewing before anything actually happens. Diana arrived at 7:45 a.m., hoping to catch up on work before the chaos began. Instead, she found Richard already stationed by her cubicle, arms crossed, holding a manila folder like it was a court summons. "Diana, where is the Patterson Logistics report from Tuesday? I've searched everywhere, and you're costing this company money." Diana blinked in confusion. "Richard, you took that home Tuesday evening when you left for your—" He cut her off with a sharp snap of his fingers. "Do not make excuses. Your generation has zero accountability. You think this is some startup where you can coast on participation trophies." The entire floor went silent. 12 pairs of eyes stared at computer screens, pretending not to hear. Diana looked at him, swallowed her pride, and said quietly, "Understood." It was the way people say, "understood," when they've accepted that logic won't penetrate concrete. That afternoon, Richard called an all-staff meeting and spent 90 minutes lecturing about professional standards and accountability measures. But every 10 minutes, he found a way to use Diana as his cautionary tale. "We cannot afford team members like Diana here, who lose critical documentation," he'd say, gesturing toward her with a condescending smile. Diana sat perfectly still, but internally, she was running calculations, evaluating exactly how much more of this she could endure. Then came 5 p.m. While everyone else headed for the elevators, Richard commanded Diana to stay behind and reconstruct a database he had accidentally wiped by ignoring IT's warnings. "I need this completed before you leave tonight," he declared. Then he grabbed his leather messenger bag and added, "I have a crucial dinner meeting with investors. Try not to create more problems in my absence. That crucial dinner meeting. It was actually his weekly poker game in Lincoln Park. But Diana couldn't say anything. She stayed until 11 p.m., rebuilding the database while quietly cursing under her breath. When she finally emailed him the completed work, his response came at 7 a.m. the next morning. Adequate. This is the standard you should maintain consistently. Now, before we continue with what Diana did next, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. By the end of that month, something fundamental had shifted inside Diana. She looked at her paycheck, $3, $8.47 after taxes, like a prisoner looking at a calendar marked with endless days. She carefully filed her pay stub and made a decision that would change everything. She was finished. Not finished in a reckless, burn all bridges way. Not finished in a manner that would let Richard paint her as unprofessional or unstable. No, Diana was going to be methodical. That evening, she went home to her studio apartment in Pilsen and retrieved her company property. 2 navy polo shirts with Riverside Transport Solutions embroidered on the chest, 1 company windbreaker, and her employee badge. She folded everything with meticulous care, placed the items in a pristine white box, and actually smiled for the first time in months. He's going to remember this moment for the rest of his career, she whispered to herself. The following Wednesday brought the perfect convergence of circumstances. The company was preparing for a major presentation to potential investors on Friday, which meant panic, chaos, and desperate attempts to project competence. Everyone was updating spreadsheets, rehearsing talking points, and stress-eating vending machine snacks. Richard was absolutely in his element, barking orders like a general whose troops secretly hoped he'd step on a landmine. His dress shoes made aggressive clicking sounds on the tile floor. And naturally, he found endless opportunities to target Diana. Why does this projection chart look amateurish? Do you even understand visual consistency? Diana, your blouse is wrinkled. You're representing MY department. Fix it or go home. Why are you walking so heavily? You sound exhausted. At 3 p.m., he left for yet another strategic client meeting, which everyone knew was actually his standing massage appointment in River North. But before departing, he dropped a stack of company polo shirts on Diana's desk. These need to be dry cleaned and pressed before Friday's presentation. The regular service is closed, so handle it however you need to. I'm counting on you. Diana looked at those shirts, looked at his retreating figure, and said calmly, I'll take care of it. But in her mind, she was thinking something entirely different. Oh, I'm definitely going to take care of it. That weekend, Richard texted Diana at 9 a.m. Saturday morning. Need you to come in today. Investor presentation prep. This is non-negotiable. She responded professionally. Richard, I'm in Milwaukee for my niece's graduation. Family commitment I mentioned 3 weeks ago. Perhaps we could address this Monday. His reply came in all caps. Family can wait. Career comes first, Diana. First. She simply typed back, Understood, and set her phone down. That evening, Diana sat on her small balcony with a glass of wine from the corner store and a smile that kept growing wider. She knew exactly what Friday morning would bring. She imagined Richard's face when he discovered what she'd done, when his polished confidence would crack in front of those investors. The mental image made her laugh, so hard she nearly spilled her wine. Friday morning arrived with clear skies and poetic timing. Diana woke at 5:30 a.m., dressed in her best blazer and slacks, and carefully packed her personal items into a leather tote bag. She even wore perfume, not overpowering like Richard's cologne, just enough to feel dignified. She arrived at the empty office at 6:45 a.m. Diana methodically cleared her desk drawers, archived her personal files to a flash drive, and placed a sealed white envelope on her keyboard, completely blank on the outside. Then came her masterpiece. She walked to the parking garage, located Richard's black BMW, and carefully placed her folded company property in his trunk. The polo shirts, the windbreaker, her employee badge, all arranged like a carefully curated gift. On top, she placed a handwritten note on company letterhead. Richard, Please find all Riverside Transport Solutions property returned herewith. Thank you for the learning experience. DM. She looked at that gleaming BMW one final time, smiled genuinely, and said aloud, "Enjoy the presentation, Richard." Then Diana Mitchell walked out of Riverside Transport Solutions for the last time. For the first time in 6 years, she felt light, unburdened, like someone who'd finally remembered her own value. By 8:30 a.m., Riverside Transport Solutions had descended into absolute pandemonium. Staff members sprinted through hallways. The copy machine jammed every 3 minutes. Phones rang with the persistence of fire alarms. And in the center of this cyclone stood Richard Bradshaw, dressed for triumph. His hair was perfectly styled. His tie was power red. And his cologne, he'd apparently tripled the usual dose, saturated every square foot of the office. The investors were arriving at 10 a.m. sharp, and he expected flawless execution. Then someone uttered the words that shattered his reality. "Richard, Diana isn't here." He froze mid-stride. "What do you mean Diana isn't here?" "Her desk is cleared. It's almost 9. She's never late." He called her desk phone silence. He called her cell, straight to voicemail. He texted, no response. His voice escalated into something approaching rage. "Where is Diana? Who has access to her project files? Who has the investor presentation backup?" Silence. 12 staff members suddenly became fascinated with their computer monitors. Meanwhile, across the city in a small cafe in Wicker Park, Diana sat by the window wearing jeans and a comfortable sweater, drinking the best coffee she'd had in years. She'd done something quietly brilliant. She'd set her phone to auto-reply with a simple out-of-office message. "Diana Mitchell is no longer with Riverside Transport Solutions. For immediate assistance, please contact Richard Bradshaw directly." At 8:47 a.m., her phone started buzzing. Richard Bradshaw calling. Diana looked at the screen, smiled, and pressed the side button to silence it. Then she ordered a croissant and opened the novel she'd been trying to read for 3 years. Back at the office, Richard was completely unraveling. The investors had arrived early. They were waiting in the conference room. The presentation files? Password protected on Diana's laptop, which was nowhere to be found. "Check my car," he screamed at his assistant. "Maybe she left backup materials there." He grabbed his keys and power-walked to the parking garage, his shoes echoing like gunshots. He opened his trunk, and his entire world stopped. There, arranged with deliberate care, sat company property, polo shirts, windbreaker, employee badge, and that note. "Please find all Riverside Transport Solutions property returned herewith. Thank you for the learning experience." For 15 full seconds, Richard Bradshaw, the man who always had the final word, had absolutely nothing to say. The investors were waiting upstairs. His staff was watching from office windows. His hands began trembling. Even his signature cologne suddenly made him nauseous. He slammed the trunk shut and whispered, "That ungrateful little." The presentation was a catastrophe. The projector malfunctioned. Half the slides were missing. Richard tried to improvise, but his words came out scrambled and desperate. The investors exchanged concerned glances. One checked his watch repeatedly. By 11:30 a.m., they politely excused themselves, promising to follow up after reviewing internal processes. Everyone in the office knew what that meant: complete failure. That afternoon, Richard's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Wishing you continued success at Riverside. DM." He actually threw his phone across his office. The following Monday, the regional director called Richard into a closed-door meeting. "Richard, we've received multiple HR complaints over the past 6 months. Yesterday's presentation disaster was the final indicator that your management style is damaging this operation." He tried to defend himself. "Sir, Diana sabotaged me. Diana worked here 6 years without incident until you arrived 3 years ago. Since then, we've had 11 resignations from your department. 11. That's not a coincidence, Richard." 2 weeks later, he was transitioned to a consulting role. Corporate language for fired, but we're avoiding a lawsuit. Meanwhile, Diana had already accepted a position at a competitor with better pay, better hours, and a boss who actually said thank you. 3 months later, colleagues would ask new hires at Riverside, "Did you hear about the woman who quit by leaving her uniform in the boss's trunk?" And they'd smile and say, "Yeah, that was legendary. They call it pulling a Diana now." So here's the question. Did Diana go too far? Or was her revenge perfectly measured? What would you do facing 6 years of daily humiliation? Would you pull a Diana, or suffer in silence? Have you ever had a boss like Richard? Someone who made work feel like psychological torture? Drop your stories in the comments. We want to hear everything. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you smile or think or feel seen, smash that like button. Share this with anyone surviving a toxic workplace, and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's just perfect calculated. Until next time, remember your worth. Stand up for yourself, and never let anyone make you feel small. See you in the next one.